so recording has started, and I will now admit the public. Okay, the meeting has started, and I've admitted everyone into the waiting room that was in the waiting room. So welcome to the ADR group meeting. And Chair Buckingham, would you like to call the meeting to order?
Sure, I am calling the meeting to order, and I think we first introduced ourselves. I'm Joey Buckingham, and why don't the rest of you introduce yourselves?
I'm Steven Sutro.
Mark Fritz.
Hi, I'm Laura Dewar.
Right.
David Woltering.
And Planner Matthew Weintraub. And I'd like to recognize Mayor Robbins in attendance and also welcome the new interim planning and building director to the town, David Woltering.
Oh,
Nice to meet you.
thank you, Matthew.
And feel free to, if you have any comments, or we can just get on to business, whatever you like.
Just move forward.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Sounds great.
Okay, go ahead, Matthew.
No, it's your floor.
Okay, well, I'm standing in for Mark Kretschnitt, who has recused himself because of tonight's agenda is too close to his home, so I'm the vice chair. Anyhow, we need to approve the minutes from last month's meeting. So has everyone looked at those? And if so, are there any comments, or do you have a motion to approve them? Or,
They looked fine to me.
yeah, they look fine to me. Does anyone have any problem with them? Nope. Okay, who moves to approve them?
Move to
Mark.
approve.
Mark, and who seconds it? Okay. Okay, great. So now it's time, it's open time for public comments. Would anybody like to comment on anything?
And I see no raised hands, Chair.
Okay, that is not a bad thing. So now we will move on to our first and only planning application, which is the Wigington Residence 58 Shady Lane. And why don't we go ahead with Matthew's introduction of this?
Yes, thank you. I'll just provide a very brief oral introduction to the project. So this is the second review of a project at 58 Shady Lane. The applicant is requesting approval of design review to make additions and alterations at the back of the existing single-family residence, including a new second-story addition and a new first-story elevated deck. The project is subject to non-conformity permit to extend and alter the existing non-conforming structure with respect to setbacks. And also a new variance is requested to construct the new elevated deck, which is a new projection, also within setbacks. And lastly, ADU permit exception is requested to allow for the amount of area converted to an internal ADU to be transferred to an addition to the main residence. So with that, I will go ahead and share my screen with the revised and previously reviewed plans, and also turn it over to the applicant, Elizabeth Rare with Polsky Pearlstein Architects. Thank you.
And I think Jared's going to speak.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I hope you've seen our new revised drawings. We heard from the ADR last session that our addition at the rear was a bit massive and a little bit complicated, and heard the desire to make it a simple shed roof addition, more like the front of the house, which we did. And we took out those two side dormers. So we have actually taken out about 93 square feet from the proposal. We're hoping that this will meet your approval. It still provides the primary bedroom at the upper floor, still has the ADU as we had requested earlier. We heard from some of you that you think that maybe we've met the criteria, and we're hoping that you agree with us that this is more in line with what you're hoping last meeting.
And just for reference, these are the currently revised plans on the left. So the existing elevations on the far left, the currently proposed elevations in the middle, and the previously proposed elevations here on the right.
Yeah, I think
Are
it's.
there, oh, pardon me.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I think it's self-explanatory what we're trying to do. We're trying to minimize the addition at the rear to make a simple shed dormer, more like the front of the house.
Okay, are there any ADR group member questions? Nope. Are there any public comments? Quiet night.
I'm sorry, Joey, if I could jump in, just one clarification. I apologize for not knowing the answer to this one. And Jared, you may have already written this. The railing material on the new proposed deck in the back, is that matching the front or is that something slightly different?
It's a wood railing, not quite as heavy as the one in the front.
Okay, so it's a wood railing. Okay, thank you.
What about the base? What about the base of the home that's rendered in kind of a light gray?
Well, we continued what is the existing base of the home, which is a light painted siding. We just continued that around the back. We didn't think it was appropriate to suddenly change the base material for the addition. So that is a white light painted siding, just to match what's existing.
Okay. Okay. So there are no public comments, right? ADR group member discussion. Anybody would like to discuss this? Okay.
I can go
So,
first if you'd like.
yeah, why don't you go first, Stephen?
Okay. I really appreciate the changes that were made, and I think that the form is nice, and the way that it sculpts in a little bit on the sides from a massing perspective helps mitigate the addition of the bulk itself. And I think it's sensitively designed in a way that keeps the rear feeling original, and is compatible with the original architecture. I can support it as designed. I understand that this is kind of, I think it's a new precedent for our town to have an ADU used in this way to make the house larger by using existing square footage, transforming that existing square footage into an ADU, and then making more bulk and mass in another location. And so I know that in some ways that it's exacerbating a non-conforming structure and is non-conforming. So I think that it would be interesting to hear the council speak about that. If they have a view on that, it would be interesting to hear from them as they hear this item. But from a design, assuming that we want to support that legislation and the density that is being handed down to us from Sacramento, I think that this is a nice, elegant way of doing it. And so if the policy is to be shaped in such a way that allows for that kind of exception, I think that this is appropriate.
Okay, well noted. So that would count as basically a
I
yay.
support it. Yeah.
How about you, Laura?
Yeah, so Stephen actually just kind of explained the one question mark for me is really kind of about the legislation and like, is this setting precedent? But from an actual design perspective, I think I could support the project now. I appreciate the changes that they made to the rear facade. And now it looks like the rear facade and front facade are part of one building. And so yeah, I would support the design side of this. Mhm.
Okay, Mark, how about you? Fritz.
Yeah, I forgot. I should have asked a question. Just the current design proposal with the dormer at the second level. How far off the property line, the northern property line, is that now? I know the southern property line, we have a little more of a buffer with the driveway. I'm just curious, I was looking for a dimension on the other set of drawings. I don't happen to see one. And I am just curious what you were able to pull that into, because you removed those side dormers, which I do appreciate. Can anyone give me an idea what that is from the property line?
I have a scale here.
I apologize, I should have asked this earlier.
Elizabeth, do you have it?
Yeah, I'm just measuring it now
Yeah,
in the
we're not
model.
in any rush. You guys are the only
Okay.
people on the agenda.
It's off the north spectrum. I scale it to be about,
8'6".
yeah, 8'6"
Yeah,
From the property line?
from the property line.
from the property line, yes. To
Because
the,
the property line, if you look at the
Yeah.
plans, the property line is how far away from the structure itself? I mean, the overhang is almost over the property line.
The
Yeah.
property line is
Right.
very close to the structure.
it's
Um,
1'11" from the property line at the lower floor
Right.
and like up the wall at the side that goes up. But the dormer itself sets back from that, and it's 8'6" from the property line.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mhm.
I mean, that's just, it was knowledge I just wanted to know how much clearance we had on that side. So I've been thinking a lot about this when I've gone by the site a number of times. I walk by this on almost a daily basis. I think I concur with the improvements. I do appreciate the removal of some of that square footage and the additional encroachment into the side yard, both in the north and the south. So, and just a simplification of the form, right? I think it's just much quieter. It definitely fits in with the overall building's architecture, much cleaner. I would say, while that's true on the second floor, I do, and I remember making the comment on the first go around, I don't see how I could support that deck, especially on the northern side of the home where it is extending, as you said, about a foot, 1'8" from the property line. I recognize that you want to keep that somewhat consistent with the that elevation, but I don't see elevating that lifts you above any 6-foot high fence line that's in between the properties. I would recommend pulling that back off that property line. I can't see having findings where that deck is elevated and encroaching into that side yard setback to such a degree. This is a large property. While everybody likes decks off their living space, I don't think that's a necessity to have it extend to the north property line to that degree. So that would be a comment. I think it will be used as a entertaining deck and eating and whatnot. So having that so closely adjacent where you could drop a wine glass on over the property line doesn't seem really appropriate to me. So that would be one modification of the design I would recommend, is pulling that significantly back to provide an additional buffer and not encroaching into the side yard as much. When it comes to the ADU, with the overall project, when you step back and say, is this actually something I think is the intended use of an ADU, the intended output or impact, I would say, for the town, and I can't say that it is, right? This is never going to be rented as an ADU. That's not something we can enforce. But the intent here is to gain more square footage in the home by leveraging the ADU square footage. So I think from a precedent perspective, it is not necessarily appropriate or in the spirit of the ADU guidelines. And that's, I would say, while I appreciate the architecture, I don't think it is a direction the town should be going in. The density of this particular lot, this is a long linear lot, right? It's obviously very difficult to build within the setbacks here. However, building on a second floor with the ADU square footage, exacerbating the nonconformities on both the north and the south, doesn't seem to be in the spirit of the ADU codes or what we're trying to do in regards to overbuilding lots. So while I appreciate the architectural decision here and the moves, and it is, I think much improved, I don't think I can support this in its approach to the ADU plus the new square footage. I think there are other places on the ground floor, while it might need to be raised, the 1.5 or 2 feet off the ground to meet flood requirements. There are other locations that an ADU could be placed in this property that don't raise it to the second floor massing and impact the north and the south neighbors in this fashion. So that's my thoughts.
Okay, so are there any more comments from ADR members? I will round it up. I actually agree with Mark Fritz, and pretty much everything he said is very consistent with my feelings on this subject. I know that while it is allowed by the state to take square footage in the house and turn it into an ADU, it is still discretionary to allow that to be traded off for FAR elsewhere in the house or to be added onto the house. It's still a discretionary variance, that one part of it. And I feel like on such a narrow lot where you are basically building an addition 8 feet from the property line, that is really, we are charged with a responsibility in this town, being on the design review, to protect and to use the rules that we have come to know, that you do not exacerbate a nonconformity. Furthermore, the deck being up so high is, as Mark said, is further exacerbating the nonconformity. And that's not even, that is not even a situation that is forced on us by the state, requiring these ADUs to be approved. Another issue that really bothers me is even now, without this supposed ADU that doesn't need parking because it's a half mile from a bus stop, there are regularly 3 cars in front of this house where you can't even see the front door. There's so many cars. There's no parking. It just seems to me this house has historically been small on this lot because of Ross regulations and design guidelines. They've always been the same. You knew when you bought a house like this, it was going to be pretty hard to do anything more with it. And now there's been this ADU bonanza where people are trading. It's so obvious that space in the house, you have to open up one 3x6 opening and it becomes part of the house. I just feel like it's really overbuilding that house on that lot and exacerbating a nonconformity. I think that ADU, the natural place for it is out in the back 40 where that little garage is. So I can't support it for those reasons. Although I will say in conclusion that you did a really good job of making it fit better, making the addition fit better with the look of the house and the original spirit of the house. So those are my comments on that.
Chair Buckingham, if I could just provide some information to the group before final deliberations. So just in terms of the concept of precedent, I don't believe this is the first project to request an ADU exception to transfer the floor area. I think it's just the first that we've seen in this configuration, where there's an internal ADU that results in an external bump out in this particular fashion. But I do believe there have been projects previously that have transferred floor area from a converted ADU to an addition somewhere on the property.
There have been.
Yeah.
I think when there were a lot, it wasn't so constrained by setbacks.
Right. So I wouldn't say it's a precedent as far as ADU policy. And I would just counsel the ADR group to base their decision on design review standards rather than ADU policy per se. Now, a project that has design factors that the ADR group wants to comment on that are a result of an ADU development, that is something that the ADR group that's within the purview, right? Any design review aspect. The ADU itself, there is a ministerial allowance for that, for construction of that ADU. And also there is the, the state mandated parking, essentially parking waiver for the parking requirement as well. But what is within the ADR group's purview is any aspect of the project design that is affected by the ADU construction, right? So that, so in making your arguments and decisions, I would just counsel to base it in design policy versus ADU policy. And I think you can come to the same conclusions. I think it's just how it's presented and how it's how you present your findings. Thank you.
Okay. So given that, does anyone want to go back and revise their comments?
I think just to clarify mine, I think the impact of the Vulcan mass on the second floor is why I can't support the project, that it's in the setbacks, exacerbating a non-conforming condition, increasing the Vulcan mass unnecessarily for both the north and the south properties. The rationale behind why that is up there is because of the square footage transfer. Hopefully that's clear.
And I would echo that and add on the elevated deck in the back is exacerbating a nonconformity, and that's just a basic design guideline in Ross that you don't do if you can help it. And this is discretionary. So I think we are 2-2 here. And I guess when that happens, correct me if I'm wrong, Matthew, it's at the the decision of the applicant to go forward to the town council and see what they have to say about it.
That is, the applicant can pursue that avenue. Mr. Waltering has raised his hand, so I'd like to recognize Mr. Waltering.
Matthew and Chair, I have a question for you for the group regarding the deck, the raised deck. There's an indication that you'd like to see a setback, the deck further setback. Do you have a sense of how far you would want to see that setback in terms of providing more separation to the property line to give the applicant some idea of direction? Is there a sense of, is that 5 feet? Is that 4 feet? What are you looking for in terms of an adjustment to the deck setback?
I'll go first. I think that the deck should just basically have a landing and a stairwell to get down to grade. And then there could be a patio at grade. I think that jacked up deck that's so big, if you want to be able to have like a table, chairs, an entertaining area, if you were to pull it in 10 feet on each side, you'd be left with nothing, which is the constraint of this lot. And this lot is just a very small lot in width. So I can't imagine if you pulled it in 10 feet on each side, you wouldn't have much of a deck left. You might as well just have stairs and a landing and go down to grade. Stephen, Laura, Mark, what do you think?
I was trying to think of the way that the deck is now on the back. It's not big enough for really congregating. It's not big enough for a dining table, I don't think. It's not big enough for a big seating group. Do you think that's accurate? If so, I could see it being a kind of a 1-for-1 replacement, because it's nice to have a little bit of space for a chair kind of or something, I don't know. If it kind of, I know it's going to move, if the application goes forward and is approved, it's going to, the current covered porch is going to move backwards a little bit. But if it kind of was a like for like replacement in terms of its utility, I think that would be reasonable.
Just to give you an insight, Stephen, the deck is out to out 11 feet 11, as noted on the plans.
On the proposed
base of building, the proposed deck to the edge of the deck is 11 feet 11.
Right, and on the existing covered porch at the rear.
I don't have a sense for how big that is.
Oh, it's not covered, excuse me. In the
Yeah, I don't think that.
It's not covered, excuse me. So the
Right.
existing rear isn't shown in the renderings here.
Correct.
Correct.
But there is
correct.
a deck on the back in the existing. It is.
No, it's just a landing, a stair and a
Just a-
landing.
I see. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Then forget, everyone rewind 90 seconds and you can get that minute back in your life. Sorry.
I would concur with Joey on that fact. I think there is it's a great question, how much to pull it back. You know, I don't think it's necessary to have a deck up that high. I could understand wanting potentially a barbecue out on something, a small landing. I would keep that to the south side because you do have the buffer from the driveway. So I think that the majority of the problem I had was with the north side being parallel and in line with the with that facade. So
Okay.
pulling that all the way back.
So a proposed compromise might be kind of from the door or from the north jamb of the exit door and northwards would be gone.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I think that potentially could be a compromise. Yeah, that could be something that I could see as working certainly better than it's currently proposed.
So similarly to David's comment, with respect to the second story, is there any advice or guidance that ADR group members can provide that would, perhaps mitigate some of the additional bulk or mass, and get the project further along the line?
I think it's well designed as it is. I don't think you can make it any smaller and have a primary bedroom in that addition. It's more just the concept of that is exacerbating a nonconformity. And you're taking square footage. Basically, that house shouldn't have that much square footage on it. And if it weren't for this new mandate for ADUs, that would never fly. So it's more of a conceptual thing. If the town council is going to okay that, so be it. It's well designed, but it is the transferring of the square footage from the lower floor and adding that, it's exacerbating a nonconformity.
And there are lots that where we discourage kind of full use of the allowable square footage because it can't be placed in a way that is appropriate. And so I think that Matthew's asking us to say, kind of just forget the ADU for a second, just pretend it's legal, basically, and say, do we support the design changes in the position that they're proposed, right?
Or in a different configuration that you can provide guidance on. Yes,
Uh-huh.
That's exactly correct.
So is there a modification, Joey, Mark, or Laura, that we could suggest that would be acceptable?
None that, just to be blunt, none that I can see is working on the second floor there. That would be functional. And that's without saying that I do appreciate the moves that were made, because I think they do improve the proposal. But to pull that back significantly where you're getting 15 foot of side yard setback or something along those lines, you essentially render that an unusable second floor addition. So I don't have any further suggestions where the configuration remains on the second floor that I could see wouldn't be exacerbating this nonconformity. Now, that doesn't say that I wouldn't suggest attempting to try to fit this additional square footage potentially somewhere else on the lot where it's on the ground floor. While it could be raised to mitigate flooding, I think that would be more acceptable where you're not increasing the bulk and mass to the degree on a second floor addition. So it's the location of the second floor that's the problematic element here, because it's up high.
Yeah, I just would so prefer to see that ADU way out in that back long lot where there's tons of open space, even if it had to be raised up out of the floodplain.
David, did you have something else to say, or is it just the?
No, I do, and thank you. What I'd like to say is going to council it'll be important for staff to really look at ADU law. And as I think all of you know, the state has really come down and really mandated that local jurisdictions work with applications like this. And oftentimes in a case like this transfer you're talking about, other jurisdictions are allowing such transfers. So that's something that Matthew, I would think we would want to look at carefully in terms of advising the council on how to handle that. So as Matthew, you suggested, looking at possible design adjustments, or even suggesting, as the group has indicated, of perhaps locating this ADU elsewhere on the property, that may be helpful, because in terms of ADU law is very, very supportive of applicants being able to transfer square footage as being suggested in this case. So I just put that out there in terms of, as we go to council with this and do our research and advise council, your design suggestions now would be very helpful.
So in that spirit, David, I appreciate that. One of the things I've been thinking about is the additional square footage could certainly be located on the ground floor, whether it's detached or attached or in another location on the lot, as Joey was suggesting. The depth of this building is not prohibitive. Where you see the deck, there absolutely could be an extension from the rear of the home on the ground floor that encompasses additional square footage. There could be an additional freestanding building on the lot. We know that the setback requirements for ADUs are different than those of the main residence. So there are multiple spots within the extent of this lot to locate a freestanding set of square footage. So I think the challenge here is the second floor encroaching on the setbacks. It is increasing the bulk and mass for the adjacent neighbors unnecessarily, where there are other solutions that don't do that. So, you can easily see something extending from the rear of this home or freestanding within the lot itself. So those would be my suggestions as alternative design explorations to take to find the extra square footage that David here so rightfully saying is encouraged. Hopefully that helps.
I actually really agree with Mark, so I'm not going to restate it. That's exactly how I feel. So that would be two people feeling that way, that there would be another place to have that ADU square footage.
I might just add, can you hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I might just add that the owners talked with both neighbors on the north side, on the south side, and both have submitted letters of support for the project.
Matthew, at this point, how do we proceed?
Well,
Can I just add one thing?
please.
Sorry, I mean, I think Mark was saying that the ADU, if it's a freestanding unit, is allowed to be in the setbacks, or out of the setbacks. And so I guess I'm just kind of wondering if this, well, okay, actually, sorry, I'm misspeaking, never mind. Sorry.
Well, no, I think what you're getting at is actually something we should talk about, is that if it's a freestanding ADU, it can be 4 feet off the property line.
But it has a height limit. It has a height limit that if you go above, it becomes a discretionary review for that ADU. So if it met those requirements of height and setbacks, if they put it, if there was a proposal to put something 1 foot from the property line, that would also require some a discretionary review, I believe. But if it meets the height requirements, then it doesn't. So this is where if we were looking at that second floor addition as the ADU, it would still require administrative review, I
Correct.
believe, is high.
Sure.
It's the height of this that's the challenge on the second floor. Whether it's an ADU or not, that's what we're struggling with. And I guess my recommendation was you can avoid that height problem by placing the ADU either on the ground floor or the additional square footage resulting from the swap on the ground floor or somewhere else in the lot where you avoid a height issue and discretionary review. But I think that's where you were going, Laura. The idea that we're already encroaching on the side yard. Well, an ADU would do that, but it wouldn't do it on the second floor without discretionary review.
Yeah, thank you.
So Chair, I would say I don't see any other hands up among any of the members of the public. And unless the ADR group has further questions or wants to consider further deliberation, I think we understand right now where the ADR group stands on the project. It seems there are two that could be in favor, two that are not in favor. And so according to the code, that would be, that does not qualify as a majority vote in favor of design review. So it does not carry an approval or a recommendation for approval forward at this point. We do have some good recommendations for revising the deck, and I also think some good recommendations for how to approach a different type of addition. I think the applicant, unless the applicant would like to request some further information or questions or present other information as well, I think perhaps we're done with the item tonight.
Matthew, if the Wigingtons would like to move forward to the council, would it be presented to the council as a 2-2 split vote, and that we mitigated some of the concerns by maybe changing the deck? Would that be the way it would be presented to the council?
Mm-hmm. So definitely the vote would be presented as 2-2, which is essentially a split vote. As David indicated, staff will take a close look at all the regulations involved with the application, and those will always be provided in the written staff report. So we'll present that information with respect to ADUs and transferring floor area, and any revisions that the applicant chooses to make between here and council also would be reviewed in the context of comments provided by the ADR group as well. So yes, that's the process.
Okay.
So Chair, if you agree, I think we could close the hearing.
Yes, I think is that clear, Jared, how you would proceed at this point? Are you?
Yeah, I think that's quite clear.
Okay.
We'll have to talk amongst ourselves.
Okay. Is there anything else that anyone wants to say about this project? All right, so I think we're closing this one. We have no conceptual advisory design review. Communications from the staff. We have the next meeting is March 15th at 7 p.m. And is there anything else that we need to discuss, Matthew?
I do not have any other items on my agenda.
Okay, so what do? We move to adjourn?
Joey, just one more quick question. And Matthew, maybe you could, if I could, ask something to the staff. Do we have, I can't recall our election cycle. I was just curious if you maybe just look into that for our next meeting. Something tells me we're at that time again in the beginning of the year. I could, or maybe we're not even close.
For election of chair and vice chair?
Of ADR members. I wasn't sure.
Appointments.
Yeah. Might just be worth researching. Okay.
Yeah, I can look into that and I can provide that information at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, great. I think I had discussed with Matthew one idea of having some sort of a meeting with the town council members to discuss this issue of ADUs. And I thought it would be very helpful for the whole ADR to get together with the town council members to just have kind of a roundtable discussion about it. Because I do think it's really going to continue to impact our town and the way our town looks. And I think it would be really smart of us to get together earlier than later
We
to,
also have the new, is it AB9 or whatever? Is that what it's called?
SB9.
Sorry, SB9, thank you. So we can split lots and we can put a duplex on lots and stuff like that, right?
I would love to have some sort of a meeting and actually a little bit of an education around it, because it's happening really quickly. And I think we owe it to our constituents to be extremely knowledgeable about what is allowed and what is not allowed, and also to share ideas with the town council. I would be supportive of trying to organize something like that, if all of you were amenable to that idea.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, for sure.
Mhm.
And obviously it would be a publicly noticed meeting, but it would be something to just a kind of a roundtable discussion.
Mhm. Yeah, I have some thoughts on how to proceed on that. Sounds like, it looks like David also does, so I'd like to let David take a crack at it.
Thank you. Thank you, Matthew. I think that as we proceed with the housing element update that Matthew's been working on in terms of an RFP process, it makes perfect sense for this group and council to have a meeting to kind of go over what are the new laws, what needs to be done in terms of updating the housing element, and what that process might be, and the sort of laws and regulations that apply broadly, including the ADUs. So I would suggest, Matthew, that perhaps what we could do is talk to the city manager about setting up that sort of meeting as requested here by this group, and really an informational meeting, and then get back to this group with what might be possible after discussions with the city manager.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. I think this type of discussion would naturally grow out of the housing element update, which will be occurring over the next year. And so that would be an excellent time to discuss not just second units, but the SB9 parcel split and duplex development regulations, as well as, perhaps other topics that the ADR group may want to bring up as relates to the housing element and what may come out of that as well. Perhaps, I would also be very, cognizant of the council's time and the demands on their time as well. And I think what the council would probably look to the ADR group for would be some type of more formal proposal as well. Rather than trying to engage the council necessarily on the ground floor and have a discussion that would lead to something, I think the council might actually very much appreciate ADR group taking the lead and moving a few steps forward and coming up with some real proposals or potential solutions to what you see as problem areas. And those could be formally transmitted to the council as well, and become part of the communication and dialogue that happens as part of the housing element as well. So just some thoughts on that.
I would really appreciate if we had this type of meeting to have someone make a presentation to explain all of the new laws really well. Kind of, so we would have in our hands, not that I can't read online what they are, but obviously to really have it broken down so that we're all together hearing it at the same time and we can discuss it. Maybe the town council's there, maybe they're not, but I think this is important for all of us to really understand going forward, because I feel like it changes almost every couple months. There's a new mandate that's even more lenient, and we need to move forward with these concepts.
So we will be bringing consultants on board to help us understand and explain the full comprehensive effect of all the housing regulations that are moving forward. And That will take some time. That will be part of the housing element process over the next year. So yes, that will definitely happen. Before we get to that full comprehensive view, we can and perhaps could discuss ADUs, second units by themselves under just the current regulations as well. If that is something that the ADR group wants to agendize for a future meeting, typically the process would be one ADR group member proposes it, a second member seconds it, and then there's a vote as to whether to agendize that for a future meeting. And that could be a presentation by staff on ADUs, as well as discussion among ADR group members.
That sounds great.
That would be great. Just, I think it would be great to give us a little more support in terms of, we are charged with making some really important decisions for people. And I think the legislation has changed so quickly that it would be great if we had a little more support along those lines.
Okay, so is there a proposal from an ADR group member for that agenda item? And is there a second?
I propose it.
I'll second it.
Okay. And are ADR group members in favor of that?
Yes.
Yes.
So staff will work towards doing that hopefully at the next meeting. And if not at the next meeting, depending on the number of projects, we can certainly do it at one of the next upcoming meetings.
So Matthew, that would be a summary of the ADU state law and how Ross how it's integrated into the Ross code and into our policies, as well as Senate Bill 9, or that's a different animal we should take at a different time. Too much.
I think we should separate them at this time. Probably just go with ADUs, since we have an ADU ordinance on the books currently, and we don't yet have an SB 9 ordinance. Nor do we have necessarily all the full documentation and guidance that we would like to have for SB 9.
But SB 9, was it just voted in, or is it just about to be? When's the
It took effect January 1st. Yes.
Say again?
It did take effect January 1st.
So it is. So our municipality is required to adhere to SB 9. We just don't have any policy yet around it and don't know how to deal with it. Is that right?
Well, council did adopt interim guidance and procedures for that. So we have a bulletin that we make available, and we have yet to receive an application. So
is it on the website? It's not in the code yet. Then it's just a bulletin.
Yes, the bulletin is on the website. It's included in the resolution that was adopted by the council.
Okay.
So I would vote, if it's already law, instead of separating these things, I would be happy to put some serious time into kind of a big meeting where we were briefed on all this and we could talk about it together and discuss what this meant for Ross. It would be very helpful to me. I don't know about the rest of you guys. But we are, again, charged with, making decisions about these things. And it's really new. I mean, it's just, it goes against the whole feeling that Ross has had for decades and decades of low density, big setbacks. It's just a whole different look. So I think the townspeople need to understand that this town's going to look really different. And that's just the way it is. And we need to be prepared for that.
So thank you. Yes, staff will agendize that item on an upcoming meeting.
Okay.
All right. So next, I think I move to adjourn. Is that correct?
One more quick question of Matthew.
Yes.
I'm sorry. This should be quick. Matthew, we saw a proposal for some modifications for the Ross Common. We saw some design iterations. Do you have any understanding of when we might see another version of that that's actually more formal instead of sort of investigatory or preliminary design?
So my understanding is that the master plan for the Ross Common was adopted. So we do have a final plan, and I believe that was the plan reviewed by council.
Didn't they kill everything in it?
They adopted a plan that involved less change versus more change. I think the resounding voice from the community was, we like what we have, don't mess with it too much. And so I think that was the sort of underlying principle of the adopted plan.
So there's a specific design that's being worked on and
Correct.
budgeted towards. Okay,
Yes.
okay, thank you.
Okay, so I move to adjourn.
Seconded. Nice
All
to meet you, David. Thank you.
Yeah, nice to meet all of you tonight.
Very good to meet you,
I look
David.
Forward to working with all of you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice to meet you. Take care.
Welcome
all
to town.
of
Okay, you too.
you.
Good night now. Take care.
Thanks,
Thank
Matthew.
Bye,
Matthew, see you in
thanks,
the morning.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.